first speaker for today. Before that, I'd like to remind that the topic for today would surround the circumstances and issues that we have regarding the South China Sea. I'm pretty sure almost every law student and even people that does not have legal background, we kind of have a grasp on what is actually going on in South China Sea, but none of us actually, not a lot of us can actually have the awareness on the complexity of the issues surrounding the circumstances. So we hope that the materials delivered by the speakers today will give us a better enlightenment on what's actually focused on the issue. So for the first speaker, Andi, I don't know if you can remember me, but this is not the first time we met. Last year, there was an event at FHUGM. It's called Education Week, where we talked about master's education abroad. I was the coordinator for that program. So it's very glad to meet you again the second time. Meanwhile, for Damos, this is the first time I have the chance to meet you. It's been an honor. Without further ado, I think it would take me more than 2 hours to read out the CV of both of our amazing speakers. So I'm just going to wrap it up. Andi, as mentioned by the director of ALSA UGM before, he is currently a lecturer at Teknik Geodetic UGM. I'm pretty sure everyone who goes to UGM has already heard of the achievements of Andi. Currently, he's also the head of Office of International Affairs of UGM. He received his bachelor degree of engineering from UGM. He also spent his master's degree and PhD degree from Australia, if I can recall. Master's degree from University of New South Wales and PhD degree from Wollongong University. I'm sorry if I pronounced it mistakenly. I always have difficulties pronouncing that. So, sir, if you would like to start with the materials that you're going to deliver, and then after Andi, we will continue with Damos and his introduction. So, you're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Rabita. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, I hope. Okay, Damos, it's an honor to be in one stage, probably not stage, but screen with you, Damos. It's always a pleasure. Okay, let me just share my screen, if you don't mind. Okay, I'll just start now. Yep, good. Okay, Rabita, can you see my screen, please? I hope everybody can see my screen, correct?
I can see your PowerPoint clearly.
Good, thank you very much. I hope someone will respond me when I have that kind of question, okay? I just want to make sure. Understanding the complexity of the South China Sea, geospatial and legal perspective. I have the honor to speak before Damos. I hope I can lead this into a more substantial discussion later on. I always start by retelling the story about UNCLOS. I think everybody here probably knows quite well about what UNCLOS is all about, but let me just visualize it just to give you a better understanding probably. So this is the coastline or baseline from where a country is entitled to maritime zone, like territorial sea for 12 nautical miles, and then contiguous zone for 24 nautical miles, EEZ, exclusive economic zone, and more than that is continental shelf or seabed. We also understand the area. We understand where the high seas is, and we also have to understand which area called or belongs to kedaulatan or sovereignty, and which area belongs to sovereign rights or hak berdaulat. If we see that from a perspective of archipelagic state like Indonesia, it will look like this. So an archipelagic state like Indonesia is entitled to designate archipelagic baselines, and then from where it can claim the 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, contiguous zone, EEZ, and also continental shelf. So it means that a country like Indonesia, which is an archipelagic country, is, if I may say, is lucky in this case because we are entitled to a very large maritime area. Now, this is what we call sovereignty, and beyond that is sovereign rights. So just to clarify this one more time. Now, we certainly are not alone in the world or alone in the ocean. If we, we have put the position like this over here, and when we have another country next to us, like country B, let's say A is Indonesia, country B is like that. Country B is also entitled to 12, 24, and 200 EEZ, which means that there will be a possibility of overlapping entitlement over here, where these two countries will need to define or delimit, we call it, maritime boundaries between them. Or if we have another country like this C, which is also entitled to 12, 24, and 200, and when there is no overlapping entitlement over here, there will be no maritime boundaries required. However, we also understand that the country C is also entitled to continental shelf, which can go beyond 200 nautical miles. So if this is the case, and then there will be possibility for A and C to have maritime boundaries delimited. Okay, so in the case of Indonesia, based on the fact that we are entitled to 200 nautical miles of maritime zone, for example, we have already 10 countries. And now we probably are looking for the possibility to have another maritime boundaries with other countries like Federated State of Micronesia. But this is a different story. We are going to talk about this later on, if time permits. So this is the situation why and where a country like Indonesia will need to define maritime boundaries with its neighbors. Now, if we apply that to this Indonesia at the moment, I mean the real situation of Indonesia, this is the Indonesian map, it will look like this. So we need to define borders with Malaysia. Sorry, if I mention from the first one at the bottom left, sorry, top left is India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, and then we have also Philippines, we have Palau, we have Papua New Guinea, Australia, and Timor Leste. So 10 neighbors. So this is the current situation, if I may. First, with if you see here in the Strait of Malacca, for example, we have defined borders also with Malaysia, but it is not yet fully completed. Here is with Australia, the small island called Christmas Island, for example. With Australia is almost done. With the Philippines, it was done in 2014, and this is with Malaysia and Vietnam. This is another example with Palau. We haven't established any borders yet, but we have our own proposal. But if we check the proposal of Palau, it looks like that. So here's very important for us to understand that if you see our map at the moment, you have to understand what the map tells you. Whether it is a dashed line like this or it is a red line like this, it means that the red line means it is an already settled and agreed boundary, but the dashed line like this means it is our proposal. It is what we want, but it does not necessarily. I mean, it is not necessarily agreed already with our neighbors. So this is the situation now. Because we have a lot of issue of borders to talk about. Now I'm going to focus here. In the South China Sea. What happens in the South China Sea? Let's see. A tale of complexity. If you see here, we usually have land surrounded by waters. Now, in this case, it is the other way around. We have water surrounded by land over here. Okay, so it means that based on the law of the Sea Convention that we just talked about, the right or the entitlement of these surrounding countries over ocean will look like this. So from China, for example, it is entitled to the south, and from Vietnam is to the east. From Indonesia is to the northeast, probably. From Brunei is to the north. The Philippines we have here, and also Taiwan. So there will be a converging maritime entitlement from these countries. So only from this geographical setting, we already understand, we can already guess that, okay, this can be very complex because a lot of countries will be entitled to ocean, which converges into the center of the South China Sea. So if we visualize all the claim and all the entitlement, it looks like this. So it's very, very complex. So just to remind you, even though everybody or every country is in compliance with the law of the Sea Convention, the situation will be already very complex. So now, can you imagine if one or two or three countries are not claiming the ocean, not based on the law of the Sea Convention? The situation can be even worse or more complex, basically. Now, let us go deeper into the South China Sea. For Indonesia, we always, always be firm about the two countries that we are neighboring with, which in this case are Malaysia and Vietnam. So that's why we already settled our borders with Malaysia in 1969. This is our borders with Malaysia. So this one is the western side, this is the eastern side. And this one is with Vietnam. Okay, so these are the borders that we already settled, agreed, and no protest whatsoever. So this is legally binding already. So it means that we have settled our borders with Malaysia and Vietnam. In this case, these are only for seabed or continental shelf. So now it is very clear, without any dispute, without any issue, that this is actually Indonesia seabed. Okay, this is Indonesia seabed, so with no dispute at all. Now, the next issue is that not about the seabed, but about the water column, or about the water, or EEZ, which in this case this is the visualization of 200 nautical miles from Vietnam. And if we measure 200 nautical miles from Malaysia, Brunei, and Philippines, it looks like that. Now also from Indonesia, remember this is our baseline. So from this baseline, we are entitled to a 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone towards the north, which will look like that. Okay, sorry, give me 1 second to turn this off. Okay, now this is the situation in the South China Sea if we visualize all the entitlement of the countries around South China Sea. Now, that was the entitlement. Now, let us talk about the claim now, because claim sometimes different from the entitlement. So this is what Indonesia's claim regarding exclusive economic zone, okay? And interestingly, this is what China claimed with regards to space in the South China Sea, which if we continue the line or connect the line, it looks like that. So this is what we understand as the 9 dash line, which means if we visualize it this way, it will look like that. So almost the entire South China Sea is now claimed or wanted by China in this case, which generates a significant area of overlapping claim here with Indonesia. But once again, we have to be clear here. Indonesia in this case is using UNCLOS in terms of claiming the EEZ in the South China Sea. On the other hand, China does not utilize UNCLOS for the purpose, but it actually bases its claim on they call it traditional fishing grounds, or basically the traditional rights that they claim. We can always talk about that later on. Now, I want to make the story a bit short here about what happened in the South China Sea, but later on I will detail it. So based on the recent decision by the PCA, the 9 dash line is illegal, so it is gone, basically legally speaking. That first, and the second is that the small islands over here are entitled only to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. I will talk in details about that one. But the problem is that China is basically ignoring those decisions, and they still come here with the kapal nelayan or the fisheries boat, and then also came with the Coast Guard, which is what happened in 2019, December 2019. Just to give you a visualization why they came, at least now we understand why they came there, because they have, or they base their claim on this 9 dash line. Now, let us talk more about. So it means that the issue of the South China is not a solely by Indonesia and China only. It's actually the business of a lot of countries over there, including the Philippines. Now, the Philippines was the country who brought this case to the court, actually, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, PCA. So I'm sorry, this is in Bahasa Indonesia, but I'll just explain. In 2013, the Philippines submitted the case, and China did not, refused to participate. But then the tribunal continued and go on. And basically, the decision was made in July 2016. Even though after that, as anticipated by everybody, and China refused the decision. So this is what happened with regards to the court or the process. The tribunal concluded there was no legal basis to China to claim historical rights to resources within the area, within the sea areas falling within the 9-dash line. So this is one of the things. So it means that the 9-dash line over here is not recognized or illegal. So that decision, even though this is actually the case between between the Philippines and China, because the decision is universal like this, so it means that this decision can be used by any other parties. So this is basically illegal. The second is this one. So the islands in the South China Sea, or islands or rock or low tide elevation, is entitled only to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, nothing beyond than that. So even though slightly bigger islands in there is entitled only to 12 nautical miles, so nothing more. Let's say, imagine if, the next decision is that it's not possible for these islands to create its own archipelagic system. So it is not possible for these islands to create this kind of system or upper baseline, which is not, this is not possible. And then the other one is, if, for example, these islands are entitled to more than 12 nautical miles, it looks like this, right? So there will be possible overlapping claim between Indonesia and whatever islands over here. But once again, it has been made clear by the court that it is not the case, because once again, those islands are entitled only to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. Nothing beyond that. So it means that for Indonesia now, because this is our outermost or forward position, it doesn't really matter who owns these islands. Why? Because we are not the party to the dispute. It doesn't really matter. Whoever owns this island, there will be no legal overlapping maritime zone measured from this island. So we don't really have to worry about the maritime boundaries to settle over there. Now, just to give you information, these are a number of bigger islands like Itu Aba. It looks like this. Itu Aba is quite big. If I zoom in, you have the solar panel installation over here. You have airstrip. So even with this size and sophistication of island, this is not an island as governed by the Article 121 of the Law of the Sea Convention, which means that it is not entitled to more than 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. And the other decision is that the reclamation conducted by China is actually harmful to the environment. That is basically the other decision. So what is now the response of Indonesia towards the issue in the South China Sea? First, if at the beginning there was a speculation, for example, that there is overlapping area between Indonesia and China, it is now confirmed that the Indonesian position has always been like this. There is no overlapping entitlement between Indonesia and China. So what I would like to restate that what Indonesia claimed since the beginning, it is now confirmed by the PCA decision, the tribunal decision, right? And then next after that, maybe Pak Damos can add something about this later on. There is a decision from the Indonesian side to rename this area into the Laut Natuna Utara or North Natuna Sea. The other one is, but one thing that I really need to remind you all is with regards to naming space on the ocean, it is actually certainly we can rename, or we can put some new name into the ocean, but when it comes to recognition from the international community, we cannot really do it unilaterally. We have to have the approval or agreement with other countries. So the only legal documents where we can find the name of a space of the ocean in the world is from the International Hydrographic Office document, which is called the S23. So it means that even though we name that into Laut Natuna Utara or North Natuna Sea, it doesn't mean that the international community would recognize it straight away, because this is actually the only basis for them to understand or to know the name of the space in the ocean, which was actually the latest one is the version of 1953. Okay, so now we talk about incidents in the South China Sea, for example. This is my last slide. There are a lot of incidents, so let just let me tell you only one of them. The one of the latest one with the not with China, because I mentioned already the China, with the one with Vietnam. So this is actually, once again, I repeat, the borders between Indonesia and Vietnam. So this is our seabed, no dispute at all. So this is the claim of, sorry, this is the entitlement of Vietnam, provided that this is the baseline of Vietnam, even though there is a discussion about this also. This is from Malaysia, Brunei, and Philippines. This is from Indonesia once again. So this is what Vietnam claimed pretty much, and this is Indonesia's claim. I think we already presented to you before. But what I'm going to show you here is this. So the overlapping and a claim basically between Vietnam and Indonesia, which we need to talk about now. So there is a Vietnamese fishing vessel came here, so that's why we went there and captured them or do something. And then, but there's another another boat or vessel coming from Vietnam, and there's an incident over that. So this is another, a typical incident happening around the South China Sea. So not only between Indonesia and China, or Malaysia, China, but also in Indonesia and Vietnam and all of this kind of thing. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there is we need clarity basically in the South China Sea in terms of space, borders, and entitlement. All right. So I will just stop here by offering to you the possibility of transboundary partnership between parties in the South China Sea. We have to remember that we have the ASEAN Working Group on the Coastal and Marine Environment, which we need to, in my opinion, to activate or reactivate. And then we have Coral Triangle Initiative around here. This is the example how they manage the ocean, their partnership in the environmental management of Southeast Asia also. We have Asian Maritime Forum. We have the UN-led coordinating body on the Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. So basically, in order for us to, there's not always ideal, basically objective or ideal ideas that how can we transform the sea of troubles in the South China Sea into sea of opportunities. All right, I'll just stop here by proposing to you a number of ideas, because I'm a technical person. I always wanted to see whether how can we utilize technology, for example, in solving or in helping to ease the tension in the South China Sea by utilizing Internet of Things or crowdsourced information. Also, private sector involvement, I think, will help. Because if this is only the issue between countries, it is most of the time very sensitive. So how about the involvement of private sectors? It might help. And we focus on the economy instead of the sovereignty and sovereign rights. And of course, we have to ensure the procedural and substantive justice in terms of managing the conflict in the South China Sea. And the last one, like what we are doing today, is fostering education. Education is very important for everybody. So young people like you guys, so you really have to understand better the issue in the South China Sea from different perspective. So you can then come up with ideas, not only emotional kind of feeling because of the issue of sovereignty and sovereign rights. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Andi, for the.
I cannot hear you. I don't know why. Probably it is me, so please check with your friend if they can hear you.
I cannot hear you.
Can everybody hear me?
Is it all good?
Apologies, I think I was having a problem with my earphone. So thank you so much, Andi. Before you even finish the presentation, we already have several questions coming in to the Q&A chat room, but we are going to save that later after our second speaker finished delivering his materials. I would like to remind the participants that if you have any questions that you would like to ask to our speaker, you can just type it immediately at the Q&A chat room. You can find it down below. There's a feature for that, and then I will deliver the questions to the speakers. We will also give a couple of people the chance to ask live if you would ask your questions live directly to the speaker. But now we would like to move on to our second speaker, Pak Damos. It's very nice meeting you here. It's an honor. Although we have never met before, I have heard a lot about Pak Damos since I participated in the Philip C. Joseph competition on my first year of university. You have been very active in international moot court competitions that is going on in Indonesia. Last year, also we had the opportunity, the Philip C. Joseph kids had the opportunity to have some sort of seminar at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with Pak Damos in it. So we're very grateful for that opportunity to introduce Pak Damos to the participants. Pak Damos is currently the Director General of Law and International Agreements of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Pak Damos has served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in different positions, both in the office in Indonesia, also at The Hague, Austria, Frankfurt, and one of his positions that he served before that is related to today's discussion was when he served as Kasubdid Hukum Laut at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He graduated from the Faculty of Law of Universitas Pajajaran, my hometown. I currently live only a few minutes away from FH4. So, and he finished his master's degree from the University of Hull in UK and doctoral degree from Goethe University of Frankfurt. So without further ado, Pak Damos, you are welcome to deliver your materials.
Thank you very much, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. I'm quite happy to be with you. There are two reasons actually. So I am very willing to be here. Actually, it is not common for me to speak in public about the sensitive issue like South China Sea. But there are two reasons that brought me to be keen to be here to discuss about this matter. The second reason, I start from the second before the first. The second is because you are ALSA, Asian Laws Society, associations. That means that you are having interested in the international law, interested in the legal rules on the law of the sea and something like that, because it is yours, it's your domain. Yeah? And the reasons why I'm willing to be here, because Professor Andi Arsana is here. So this is very important for me because we always collaborate in order to explain about this complicated issue. So I'm happy with Professor Andi Arsana. When I say professor, it doesn't mean about the formal attribute. I'm talking about professor is talking about the quality rather than the formal attribution. Yeah. So please be mind on that. Right. Before I start, I would like to summarize about me. This is about me, and I like to draw your attention that I have blogspot as well, and I have also something that always in the public every day, even recently. That is Twitter. So normally, my wife will be angry if somebody follow me, but in this Twitter, I will assure you that she will not be angry if you follow me. So please do so if you want to, if you want to being updated about what happened in the current issue, especially international law of the sea. I have also at the moment making tweet war, if I may say, tweet war with many many scholar, including Chinese scholar as well. And this is a very good tweet discussions. And there's a lot of South China Sea issue here being debated. And of course, this is something that I can expose the positions of Indonesia, not necessarily officially, but at least what is in mind of Indonesia foreign policy is reflected in my Twitter. Yeah. Right. Let we start with something about the anatomy of the South China Sea conflict, and I'm glad that Pak Andi Arsana has already introduced you the very basic principle. This is very important because what happened now, when people talking about this conflict, they are talking about sometimes very, very wide and sometimes not focused, then even sometimes it's very confusing. So what I'm going to share with you, please be in mind that this conflict is not as easier as we thought. Yeah, this is what we call it in Indonesia is like gajah yang terlalu besar untuk dipahami hanya dari satu sisi. Ya, it's like a elephant, ya. Gurita. So what is going now in public discussions about it? I just want to help you to understand this in a very simple way. If you look at the South China Sea conflict, you need to make a distinctions between three areas, yeah, and try to prevent not to put it all together in one box, because if you put it all together in one box, you get lost and you get confused. The first, we are talking about what so-called title to feature. This is the question about who own which feature belong to which country. That's talking about Spratly, this is about Parasol. Yeah. So this is the core issue of the South China Sea actually. Yeah. So this is the basis. So this is the problem, which is the fundamental at the core. Yeah. Talking about title to territory, because they are fighting to claim the feature in South China Sea. Pak Andi Arsana already explains about the feature. Yeah, a lot of feature, Spratly, Parasol, and a lot of name there. It's about hundreds, I think, 100 feature. So they are fighting to claim their sovereignty over that. Now, in this cluster, we are purely talking about international law on territorial acquisition, territorial title. So in Indonesia, we did have that kind of problem. That's the problem of Sipadan and Ligitan. Yeah, Sipadan and Ligitan is talking about title to feature. So this is the core issue. Never forget that this is the core issue. Although I know that some scholar, some public observer try to introduce another issue, and then they try to hide that the core issue is this one, yeah, title to feature. So if you learn about international law in the textbook, you will learn about title to territory, about what so-called effective occupations of the La Palma case, the question of territorial acquisitions, the mode of territorial acquisition, for example. So a lot of legal concept is being involved in this first cluster. Now the second cluster, which I believe Pak Andi Arsana very much explained to you, that's about maritime entitlement or maritime delimitation. This is the second issue. Yeah. And this kind of issue could only be solved if the core issue already solved. Yeah. Because we cannot talking about maritime delimitation if we do not know which feature belong to whom. Because in order to make maritime delimitations, we should be sure where's our counterpart. Who is our counterpart? Is it Vietnam, the Philippines, China, or something else, right? So this is the second issue that we need to make a distinction. Yeah. Now, between the first issue and the second issue, there is an interchange. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is quite unfortunate. The conflict now being exposed to the public is not about the first and the second issue. The discussion and debate now is merely on this issue. I say this is the third issue, regional stability. When we are talking about regional stability, that means if they not solve the problem of title and the problem of maritime entitlement and the limitation, then the stability will endanger the regions. Right? In the third cluster, in the box of the third issue, we are talking about international relations. We are talking about diplomacy, and we are talking about DOC, we are talking about COC. Lawyer is not very much interested actually in the box number 3. Yeah. Lawyer always interested in the box number 2, yeah, and then in the box number 1. Yeah. Even for my office, for example, I'm very much dealing with the box number 2 and the box number 1. Somebody else will take care about the box number 3. So, for example, DG of ASEAN, Mr. Jose Tavares, is dealing with box number 3. Yeah, there's also DG of ASPASAP. They are dealing with issue number 3. So I'm dealing with the issue number 2 and number 1. So again, you need to distinguish the 3 different, even related matters. Yeah. Of course, issue number 1, issue number 2 can create instability. Yeah. And then issue number 1 should be solved first before we are talking issue number 2. Now, let me scan where Indonesia is. For sure, and Pak Andi Arsana already make it very clear, Indonesia is not in the box number 1. Because Indonesia doesn't claim anything there, and nobody claim our island, even Natuna. Nobody claim Natuna. So that means we are non-claimant state, right? Yeah, of course, there's also confusions among the public observer, always pushing that Indonesia now is a claimant state. But of course, they have their own definition about what constitutes claimant state. To our legal perspective, claimant state means state who claim title. So this should be very clear. Yeah. Not claim about maritime zone. Yeah. Because when we are talking about the second issue, it is not about claimant. It is talking about the limitations. Yeah. We still have problem with Malaysia, Singapore, and we have also the limitations, pending the limitation with the Philippines. But we never say that we are claimant in this case. Yeah? We only claimant one time during the Sipadan Ligitan case, because that's talking about title, not talking about the limitation. So Indonesia is not in the box number 1. That's for sure. What about in the box number 2? Is Indonesia in the box number 2? The answer is, it is not clear before the tribunal arbitrations rulings came out. Why? Because at that time, there is no authorized legal determinations whether or not the feature in South China Sea can generate 200 nautical miles. Of course, Indonesia already made a kind of preemptive measure. In 2010, for example, in 2010, before the PCA ruling came out, Indonesia made a kind of strong view that none feature in the South China Sea could create maritime zone, EEZ, and continental shelf, because we consider they are rock, right? And then after that, a lot of literature saying that, oh yes, or oh no, it could be yes, it could be no, until the tribunal in 2016 make a determination that none of them create 200 nautical miles of EEZ and continental shelf. That's mean for Indonesia, I will come later about this. That's mean for Indonesia, we are not in the box number 2. We are not in the box number 2. No state in South China Sea, in the disputed South China Sea, dealing with Indonesia. Only Vietnam and Malaysia, we have the limitations situations. Yeah, we have overlapping claim, and this is not disputed. I mean, it is not about title, but it is merely about the limitations, and we do it with other countries as well. Yeah. So again, we are not in the box number 2. Now, what about box number 3? Indeed, we are in the box number 3 because Indonesia concerns about the regional stability. Yeah, this is something natural. Yeah, if neighbor quarrel and then ada kebakaran di tetangga, of course we are very worried, right? So this is natural. So Indonesia is very much in the box number 3. Try to contribute to what so-called regional stability. And in this, under this box, then we are talking about DOC, Declaration of Code of Conduct, COC. Yeah. We are talking about ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. But this is the problem of all. I mean, it's not the problem of the claimant only, but this is talking about international peace and security. And very much on the box number 3, international relations scholar very much talking about this. So this is the point that the first instrument, the first introduction that I would like to emphasize under this context. Right, now, this is when we are talking about regional stability. Yeah? When we are talking about regional stability, we are not claimant state. We only say, okay, come on, don't create unnecessary instability. So that's why we push very much on the code of conduct, yeah, negotiated between ASEAN member state and China. So this is about regulating the conduct of state. Yeah. But to be sure, it is not a forum to settle territorial dispute and maritime delimitation, because it is not a place. Yeah. When we are talking about the code of conduct, when we are talking about the code of conduct, we are talking about conflict prevention, and also we are talking about how to create peaceful South China Sea. So this is the essence of the regional stability. Right now, the problem is when I put back, I will get you back to the cluster number 1 and number 2, which is very legal. We have a legally confused here. Why? Because Pak Arsana already mentions what so-called 9-dash line or historic waters. This is the claim, and this is make everything become confused, because it's against the formula that we have already known about the law of the sea. This is again, and then it's already been confirmed by the tribunal established under UNCLOS that this is unlawful. This is illegal. Right. 9-dash line, historic waters. It is unilateral claim. Okay. And this is in breach of international law. And this is already being confirmed by the tribunal in 2016. What I'm going to draw your attention is, I like you to try to what so-called compare this with Deklarasi Juanda. Yeah, because this is very important, and we are very proud about Deklarasi Juanda. But the story of Deklarasi Juanda and 9-dash line is would be the same in the beginning, but different at the end of the story. Yeah, so you will find out which one is having a happy ending. Yeah, right. Now we are talking about Deklarasi Juanda. Before Deklarasi Juanda, Indonesia consists of islands where in between islands there were high seas. Yeah, there were high seas. And Indonesia then declared Juanda declarations by drawing the straight baseline closing the island, right? And I will bring you to the situations after the declarations. This is unilateral claim. Yeah, we got protests from many states, and then even many states and many scholars saying that Indonesia breaking international law. That's what happened in 1957. So if you consult the American Journal of International Law during this period, you will find a lot of literature article saying that Indonesia make unilateral claim and Indonesia breaking international law. And then we went to the UNCLOS, and then we get that, and then we get approval from UNCLOS, and then it's done. By the conclusion of UNCLOS, they finally agree with us with the declaration, with the Deklarasi Juanda. Now what happened? People say, everybody say, Indonesia making international law instead of breaking it. So this is the happy ending about our unilateral declaration, which was accused breaking international law. So Indonesia making international law instead of breaking it. Now, what's the secret? Yeah, what's the secret? Why we very successful in converting unilateral declarations became accepted declaration. That's what I call it diplomacy effort. Yeah. You see the two our senior here, I may say the two heroes here, yeah, Professor Kusmat Maja and Professor Hasim Jalal. They make a combinations. Yeah. Professor Mokhtar Kusmat Maja did something. What Pak Mokhtar did is transformation of Juanda Declaration into a legal concept that was known to international law. So this is very important. This is the first step, yeah, that we did at the time. Pak Mokhtar tried to translate the political declaration of Juanda into a legal concept. When Pak Mokhtar described it in a legal concept, then everybody say, "Oh, now I can understand. If this is the explanation, I could understand." Everybody say that. Yeah. And then after that, yeah, Pak Hasim Jalal follow by fighting for international recognitions. So remember, recognition. Yeah. Recognition is a legal concept. Don't forget about recognition. This is very important. Yeah. Because recognitions that make a kind of unilateral become accepted under international law. And then The next step is making use of international legal argument and mechanism. So again, I would like to encourage you as a member of Asian law associations, never underestimate about international legal argument and mechanism. Because through this mechanism and through the legal argument, Indonesia make itself very clear about what it really wanted in Deklarasi Juanda. Yeah. So I would like to make a summarize. Pak Andi Arsana already make this. Yeah. So we have already being what we call it. We have already being accepted to make a legal claim under UNCLOS. Yeah. Now compare with China claim. Yeah. With China claim, you see this is the 9 dash line. Yeah. The China claim, I may say, remain unilateral and breaking international law. So for you as a young generations, I would like to please be proud about our dignity that Indonesia, when being accused by the world as a breaker of international law, Indonesia was not comfortable. Indonesia was not happy. So that's why Indonesia tried to convince the world, please, we are not breaking international law. Yeah, we want to explain ourselves. Yeah. And this is the explanation. This is the legal explanation. What the archipelagic concept would mean. And then the world say, okay, that's good. And then it has become a law under UNCLOS. Yeah. So this is the reason why Indonesia emphasize the importance of UNCLOS, because Indonesia was and is reformatted by UNCLOS 1982. So if you want to look at the what we call it the mystery of historic claim, yeah, that being affected to Indonesia, Professor Hasim Jalal make a kind of a very good statement. You can also listen to his statement, because he's the one, I think he's the only one now that knows very much about how Indonesia, how the historic 9 dash line being involved in the Indonesian foreign policy. So this already made public by the Foreign Policy Institute, yeah, under Pak Dino Patijala. It's very good discussions at that time, and I got a lot of information from Pak Hasim Jalal what this 9 dash line is really about. Yeah. Yeah. Right now, perhaps the last parts that I would like to share you. People always make a kind of criticism. Yeah. Indonesia can only send diplomatic note, protest, now protest, tomorrow protest, and then the next protest is only a paperless protest. Yeah. So what I'm trying to share with you as a future lawyer, diplomatic note, it is only a paper. Yes, physically it is a paper, but this paper has legal significance. What is the legal significance of diplomatic protest? What we call it under international law literature about persistent objection. Because from persistent objection, we preventing a claim become embryonic and consolidated. Yeah. We try to say no, 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 and no. Yeah. And then from that point, we're not bound by the claim. Yeah. This is the legal significance of the persistent objection, and that's what Indonesia did, and that's what Indonesia does, and that's what Indonesia is going to do in the future. Yeah. So it is not a paperless. It is a very legal significant. Yeah. As a lawyer, I think you will share with me how important legally this kind of persistent objection. So Indonesia reject 9 dash line. Yeah. Indonesia reject the so-called maritime rights and interests with China, and we have already did it since 1994, 96, 98, until just weeks ago. Yeah. We consistently saying this. Yeah. Right. now I want to bit short in this because Pak Andi Arsana already make it. Yeah. What I'm going to say this is 4 years later, after the tribunal ruling, people still confused. Yeah. People still confused because there is a public expectations that the tribunal can solve the problem, yeah, but it cannot. It cannot. Why? Yeah. Because the tribunal is not intended to solve the root of the conflict. Yeah. It cannot do it. The tribunal is not authorized to solve the conflict. So the tribunal only say what the tribunal is authorized to say under UNCLOS. Yeah. What it is, tribunal cannot make a ruling on who owns which countries. Because this is the question of title sovereignty. It's like Sipadan and Ligitan between Indonesia and Malaysia. They should agree to bring it to the tribunal or to the ICJ, for example. So it's not intended to solve this problem. The second is it also cannot solve the maritime limitations because again it should be themselves discuss with it unless they agree to bring it to the tribunal. So the public expectation about this is a bit beyond, beyond what the tribunal supposed to do. Yeah. Right, so this is unresolved until now. And of course, they should resolve it by themselves. Yeah. But the tribunal, and this is very important for Indonesia, the tribunal only answer this question. The first is 9 dash line is not valid because the three questions being posed to the tribunal. No future entitled to 200 nautical mile. Yeah. And then some of them are low tide elevation. So that means the tribunal interprets UNCLOS provisions. That's what the tribunal did. So what about Indonesia? You can look at it. Before the tribunal rulings, the claim is very confusing. It's like spaghetti. Yeah? Nobody can understand about the claim before the tribunal. But after the tribunal, it's become clear. It's become clear from the map that maritime entitlement is supposed to be like this. Yeah. So there is no more spaghetti over there. Now, that's mean no disputed feature. Andi already make it clear. Whoever owned the feature could not generate overlapping area with Indonesia. So the way forward, again, we are very much talking about number 3. Yeah. That's why in the Twitter, in the Facebook, or in the literature, they are always very much more talking about regional stability. Yeah. They are not touch about the legal issue. Yeah. So on the legal issue, Indonesia is always asking, please clarify your claim. Yeah. Because this is very important because after the tribunal, the claimant should clarify the claim. Yeah. Because it's already opened the way. The tribunal already opened the way and make it clear picture which one which one can generate and which one cannot. And the tribunal say nothing can generate. So that's mean the feature can only have 12 nautical mile of territorial sea. Yeah. And then number 1 is far away, still far away, solving tighter ownership. Yeah, it's still far away. I assume that there must be some generation to come in order to solve number 1, because until now even nobody want to talk about ownership because it is a very absolute position. This is mine, it's not yours. And then another claimant say, no, it is mine, it is not yours. So they always mutually negated claim. Yeah? On the other hand, they are not willing for a time being to sit down. Yeah? So again here, I would rather say that I respect very much President Suharto decisions on Sipadan Ligitan, let's bring the case to the ICJ in order the next generation is not burdened with this case. And we are happy because until now, to date, Indonesia has no more dispute problem on island on feature. So we have no more question on title territory. We are clear on that. The only thing that we have now is about the limitation, and this is normal. Yeah, all states always have the limitations exercise. But on the island dispute, on the title territory, Indonesia is already clear. So we have no such kind of problem. Right, I think that's all that I can share with you. Of course, this is a very general, but we can make it further in the discussions if we have. Thank you very much, Ibu Rabita.
Thank you very much, Pak Damos. I think most of us can agree that the subject of international law of the sea is very complex. But what Pak Damos just explained to us is basically like what I have learned for 6 months wrapped up in 30 minutes. So it was very useful. I think it was very comprehensive. I'm pretty sure the participant felt the same way. And now we are going to enter the best part of the seminar, which is the question and answer discussion. So I hope that both Pak Damos and Pak Andi is ready to answer some of these questions, because some of these I find are very interesting and it might be a little difficult, but I'm sure for both of you, it'll be very easy to answer. So I'm just gonna start reading out the questions from our participants in order. The first one is the most common question that more than one participant asked, and this is directed to both Pak Damos and Pak Andi. Now, when we're talking about the South China Sea Arbitration Tribunal, the ad hoc tribunal, considering that China is very reluctant to take part in the process of dispute resolution in the tribunal, we can see from the fact that, for example, Philippines, they started their claim in the tribunal unilaterally, and China rejected its participation. Even some of the arbitration award produced by the tribunal, China rejected to enforce the decision. For both of you, to what extent do you think the creation and the activities of the tribunal is effective to tackle the issues and to ease the tension between all of the countries involved in the delimitation issues?
Who will go first?
Pak Andi, I think the first.
Up to you both.
Right, the younger one first. Or I think I should go first because Pak Damos will certainly add the substantial, or can correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you very much for the question. If we look at the dispute settlement in general, bilateral particularly, we usually start by doing negotiation. So this is the easiest. This is probably normatively the first option that we do. It is like negotiation between Indonesia and all other countries, like the 10 neighbors, for example. Negotiation is always comfortable to do, provided that the relationship between the two countries are good enough to talk. Okay, and then after that, when we escalate a little bit the issue, we might want to have the involvement of the third party. In this case, is mediation. We also have done this in different cases, like in Aceh, for example. So the next one will be, so arbitration will be the third or the fourth option, will be the litigation or the court. In my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not pretending to understand everything here, legally speaking, but we go to the court as the last resort, as the last option, because we understand that we cannot really do much when we give the case to the court. We just, if I may say in my own term, we just basically lose the control. Basically, we just give a third party to decide without being able to say too much about that, because the court will eventually finalize or decide the case based on the legal provision. So it means that it is based on the situation. If you think that the relationship between two countries are good enough, then negotiation will be always the first option, at least to start with. Now, with regards to arbitration, I think Pak Damos can always say a lot more about this. But what draw attention, people's attention is about the fact that China does not recognize the decision, or the China did not even decide to be involved in the decision. That's why then the choice of the choice of the arbitrator was done actually solely by the arbitrator without the involvement of China. What we have to understand here is that even though China did not participate, it doesn't mean that China is excluded from the process, because that is what the law says at that time. So it is not that because I was not involved in that process, so now I'm free from the decision. I'm actually free from the consequence of the decision. It is not the case. The next thing I would like to say is that recognition is something, or I mean, like the acceptance is something, but whether or not the law or the decision is applicable, in my opinion, it is still applicable. It doesn't really require recognition or acceptance, because it is a law anyway. So it is like if you're a citizen of a country, it doesn't really matter. It does not really matter if you actually accept or recognize a law. The law is applicable to you anyway. So in this case, in my opinion, is that China. It is true that China does not accept that decision, but it doesn't mean that the law or the decision. It does not really weaken the power or the legal power of the decision. That first. Second, even though the decision was made actually for the case between the Philippines and China in this case, because the question, I think, is very smart. It is not actually asking the court to decide case between them, but basically a very, very good, smart legal question that is asked, whether or not this 9-dash line legal, right? So it is, I think, a very smart question. So it means that it is not necessarily applicable to those two. It is applicable to everybody or anybody or any country that has an issue with in the South China Sea regarding to the 9-dash line. So that is my opinion. I think Pak Damos can certainly add a lot more. Terima kasih.
Good. Now my turn.
Yes, Pak Damos, go ahead.
Good. I think I can follow Pak Andi. Just take it as a Pak Andi opinion, yeah. And I support Pak Andi opinion. It's not my personal opinion. Yeah. So the fact that China reject the arbitration ruling very much concerns international relations, diplomacy, and what we call it, geopolitical observer and something, and some more. But for a lawyer, it's not very much. I mean, as a lawyer, I don't think that we have very much concern in this, because the ruling having its authority from UNCLOS, it is not from the political support of the state. Even the ruling being ignored by the parties to the dispute, it is still the ruling. Is that the logic of the lawyer, right? That's the logic of the lawyer. So I have a what called adagium here, a legal adagium, saying this is from the Latin, yeah. Res judicata veritate pro habetur. That means whatever the ruling, it should be the truth. You cannot contest it. So that's the logic of the legal thinking. So that's why when people always discuss with me why Indonesia not support the ruling, why somebody should reject it, and I say it is not relevant to asking that question, because the ruling is always the ruling, whatever you like it or not, right? Because its authority is not coming from state. Its authority is coming from UNCLOS. So again, there's a different sense of smelling between those who having background international law and those who have background with international relations. Yeah. for the international relation, they always it's matter. It's matter. I mean, the political support of state always matter. Of course, they have their own their own methodology. They have their own logic in saying that. But as international lawyer, I'm not very much concerned on that. Yeah, because whatever the reason, the ruling is always there, and the party to the dispute can only overrule the ruling by making another ruling. Yeah, that's the logic. So now I give you example. Yeah, United States in Nicaragua case also rejected the decision of the court. Yeah? But how long? I mean, how long they can sustain the rejections? Yeah, at the end they will accept that. Yeah, and another example, for example, how the Russia, for example, rejected the decision of the tribunal on the Arctic sunrise about the Greenpeace ship being arrested by Soviet Union. Yeah, the ruling say that Russia should release it, and Russia say I don't want to recognize the ruling and something. But at the end, compliance is there. So again, this is the matter that for international law is not very much bother about whether rejecting or not rejecting. And then the second point that I would like also to share with you, what so-called that it is not state examine the ruling or the behavior of the court. Yeah? It should be vice versa. It should be on the way around. It should be the court examine the state behavior. Right? This is the logic of international law, right? Ya kan? Nggak mungkin pengadilan, nggak mungkin kamu menilai pengadilan, kan? Tapi pengadilan yang menilai perbuatanmu. So if somebody try to examine the tribunal decisions and then saying that it is wrong, it is not good, it is not state doing it. It should be the court itself that examine whether the state is wrong or not. So this is again the logic of international law is quite very distinct, and I like to share with you here because you are ASEAN Law Association. So please do and think according to the legal logic rather than not. So that's my point. So I agree with Pak Arsana. So I support Pak Arsana point of view, and then be like that, I think. Thank you, Rabita.
Thank you both to Pak Damos and Pak Andi. It's very nice to see the perspective of both of you. Now if we may move on to the next question. This one is filed by Kak Angelo Wijaya, one of our students at UGM, which I find that his questions are actually very interesting. Considering that the dispute involves multiple ASEAN member states and also China regarding territorial delimitation, do you think it's possible that rather than states claiming their interest on their own, the ASEAN members, they actually come to an agreement between each member states before they bring up a claim against China? So his question leans more to the fact that, is it possible if among ASEAN member states, we cooperate first to get the best of our interest, and then after that, we might find a better solution on how we want to tackle China out of this whole delimitation issue? And this is addressed to both of you, of course. So whoever would like to start first, you are more than welcome to.
May I start first, Pak Damos?
Okay, Pak Andi, please.
I always start first and then you give the correction. Angelo, thank you very much for asking question. This is my good friend also. Angelo is my good friend too. First, I agree somehow that we of course need to deal with our neighbors first, the bilateral issue that we need to handle. But in ASEAN, I'm not an expert in ASEAN, but at least in general, we understand that in ASEAN, we respect very much each other, a non-intervention principle and all of this kind of thing. We certainly have, being the if I may say, being the older brother in ASEAN, we certainly have an issue with our neighbors, like with Malaysia. It is certainly obvious. I mean, in terms of borders, I'm speaking about with the Philippines, Singapore. So if we talk about borders, the issue between Indonesia and Singapore is pretty much done, if I may say. I mean, close to finalized. But with Malaysia, we certainly have a lot more to do, and this is one of the most delicate, if I may say. Why I said this, because in fact we already settled our borders in we started to settle our borders in 1969. But until now, there is no, if I may say, there's no significant progress, or at least there's no agreement that we managed to establish. From my research and also from my general perspective, we did our borders in 1969 was actually quite political. Why? Because at that time we were in the position also to try to convince other countries to support our position to claim as an archaeological state. Pak Damos already mentioned, but this is actually my observation, that in order for us to generate or to get support from other countries, it is nice if we can also secure the support from our immediate neighbors. Malaysia is certainly one of them in this case. So we settled our borders back in 1969. Was also with the motivation that we secure support from them in order for us to fight in the international stage to gain the status of archaeological state. So I think it is quite different now, the situation. Why then after that, the progress that we made with Malaysia, in my opinion, honestly, it is not as fast as we want. So the first agreement in 1969, and now we don't really have any more agreement in terms of borders. So why I'm saying this, it means that we have our own issue actually within ASEAN, bilaterally speaking. So if you say that, don't you think that we have to deal with our neighbors first? Of course, I said yes, certainly. It will be a lot better for us if we settle our own issue first within our neighbors, and then we can go as a group to face a bigger, I'm not saying enemy, but a bigger party, bigger issue. But if you see, I made an animation about that. I actually translated from a caricature published in the Philippines. ASEAN is actually like 10 small fish facing a big fish, which is China in this case. But what ASEAN is doing is actually the 10 small fish actually try to carry a mask of a bigger fish in order to look like a big fish also in the face of China. But what happens is that in carrying this big mask, the 10 ASEAN members are not always in one opinion, in a single opinion. So sometimes one or two will just go around and leave the crowd, leave the group, which means that if one or two or three or more than 5 will leave the group, they will not be able to carry this mask, and then the mask will basically fall, and then the truth will be revealed that actually ASEAN is not actually a big fish. It is merely a 10 fish that is facing a big fish. So there's a caricature. I'm not a political scientist, but I think that captured quite well the situation in ASEAN. So that basically, because of the different opinion, different situation in this case, and different dependencies of ASEAN members upon China in this case, I think it is not very easy for them to be in, together themselves to make one voice in facing China. That is my opinion. Pak Damos, you can probably correct me.
Okay, I'm very interested with these questions, and I mostly agree with Pak Andi Arsana, but I want to put it in the more detail and more deepening. This question is look like a very nice question, but again, it is not free from the distortions of the three issues putting together, right? So when Angelo, for example, asking about the dispute, which dispute? I mean, there's a lot of dispute in South China Sea. So if you suggest, for example, why not ASEAN member settle their own problem? If we are talking about the title to territory or the title to feature, they cannot do that. Because some feature being claimed by ASEAN member, but not claimed by others. Some claim, some feature claimed by Vietnam, but not claimed by the Philippines, for example. But all feature being claimed by ASEAN member, always claimed by China. So that's mean ASEAN cannot, for example, okay, let discuss about Quadrant Reef, for example. Quadrant Reef is a feature in South China Sea claimed by the Philippines and also claimed by Vietnam, right? Vietnam and the Philippines cannot say, okay, let me discuss about Quadrant Reef, which belong to which, because China is also claimed the Quadrant Reef. Yeah. So again, on title to territory, I doubt, yeah, that they can settle by themselves for the first and then go to China. It is not the proceeding. It is not logic. I mean, to settle the title on territory exclude by another claimant, right? So they must go together. They must sit together. And unfortunately, China should be there. Yeah, China should be there. Right. But on the cluster number 2, I agree with you, and I agree with Pak Andi Arsana, because Pak Andi Arsana very much concentrate on the cluster number 2. That's about maritime delimitations and maritime entitlement. Of course, we should push them to negotiate, yeah, to negotiate among themselves, yeah. Malaysia, Brunei Darussalam, and the Philippines, and also Vietnam, yeah. That's mean they can do it, yeah, they can do it. But of course, the limitation on maritime boundary is not very easy one. So if you see the situations now, yeah, Indonesia is the most active doing the limitations. Yeah, sometimes on the table we have 10 projects, 10 delimitations with neighbors in the same time. Yeah, so Indonesia is very active. Why Indonesia very active? Because Indonesia is interested to settle the boundary. And why Indonesia very keen to do that? And why it is easy for Indonesia to negotiate the boundary? Because Indonesia has no problem on title to territory. Yeah. So for example, like some claimant, they have title problem, and then they should settle first about the title problem. Yeah. Now, on the cluster of maritime delimitations, we can push them to have to settle themselves. Yeah. On the third cluster, so this is also interest most scholar now, especially international and political scholar. That's about regional stability. The divisions, if you say divisions among ASEAN members, is very much on the cluster number 3. Yeah? Because some states say, oh no, and then some say, oh, we must say a bit strong and something like that. But we are lucky that yesterday the ASEAN summit made a very, very clear statement on this issue. Yeah. And then the ASEAN, you can also see in my Twitter that ASEAN very firm using UNCLOS 1982 as basis for maritime entitlement, for the also the legal framework about the behavior of state. Yeah. So this is about the cluster. We are talking about the cluster number 2 and the cluster number 3. So again, to me, it is very important for you to make distinction, yeah, between the 3 of them. If not, you will get lost. Yeah. And then the prospect of the code of conduct, yeah, we are very hard to deal with that. Yeah. Of course, when dealing with the code of conduct, it is a very difficult, because in the mind setting of the claimants is always different. So it is not easy. There must be a kind of breakthrough in the negotiations. Yeah, a lot of things being constrained in the negotiation, but we are very optimistic that we can have the compromise on how to conclude the code of conduct. Okay, Rabita.
Thank you so much, Pak Damos and Pak Andi, for answering the question from Angelo. Now the next one, this actually relates with my personal question that I was about to ask, but thankfully one of the participants, Agung Trisna, he questioned the same concept like me. As we all know that not only in the South China Sea Tribunal, but basically international tribunals, especially the ICJ, they have dealt with so many issues on maritime delimitation, though I believe none of the cases are of a great caliber like what we have in South China Sea, one of the decisions produced by the ICJ, one of the earliest, would be the North Sea Continental Shelf, which gave birth to the equidistant principle that has been used by many further cases in the ICJ after the North Sea Continental Shelf case. So the question is that, why would it be so hard for the South China Sea situation to apply the same concept like what the ICJ did to some states whose eventually the question of maritime delimitation was solved through the equidistant principle? Considering the fact that in the South China Sea situation, mostly we're dealing with small islands. So would like to hear on your opinion about that.
Thank you very much. I will start. Thank you. Can I show a slide if you allow me?
Yes, please.
Question. Mohon maaf nih Pak Damos, kalau dosen geodesi apa bingung Pak. All right, I have a slide that I did not really show you before. Okay, this is the first thing first. Okay, if we talk about maritime delimitation, we certainly have to be clear first about what happening and the entitlement. Okay. Certainly UNCLOS is our basis. So let's say we have, I hope you see this, Ravita, my PowerPoint, right? Okay.
Yeah.
If we have two countries here, let's say A and B, both are parties to UNCLOS. So meaning that their entitlement over ocean will be the same as in principles. So meaning that if A is entitled to 200 nautical miles of EEZ, for example, B will be the same, right? So if the distance between them are less than 2 times 200 nautical miles, there will be no issue between them, right? So A and B are not neighbors in terms of international contacts or maritime boundaries. Unless, but the problem is that if this country B extend their claim beyond what it should do, like this, that will generate overlapping area. If you're from country A, what will you do? I mean, will you say, okay, now we have a overlapping area, so we have to delimit, or we have to settle our borders? Because this is what your understanding is, right? So A and B should not really talk about borders because we don't have anything to settle. We don't have any issue to deal with. So the problem is now that there is an imbalance here. One country, A in this case, is using UNCLOS, but other countries is not using UNCLOS. They just do it. And then can you imagine if country B then comes to country A and say, hey brother, now we have an issue to settle. We have to settle our borders. So this is wrong at the first place, actually. So, I mean, why would we, I mean, let us now talk about, we don't need to talk about the method here, like equidistance line or whatever we talk about, because the reason at the beginning is already wrong. Okay, I think this is what happens in the South China Sea. So if in the South China Sea is everybody is in compliance to UNCLOS, and then we discover the overlapping claim, like what happens between us, between Indonesia and Malaysia, Indonesia and Vietnam, it was clear, right? Because everybody is with using UNCLOS, and we have the overlapping area, and then we can consult the right articles in UNCLOS. If the overlapping area is for territorial sea, and then we consult Article 15. If we talk about the overlapping EEZ, we talk about Article 74, and then Article 83 for the continental shelf. Okay, I think we have to make it clear first. So this is the situation. So if one country is using law and other countries not using law, we cannot even start to talk about maritime delimitation, let alone the method that we use. Okay, that first. Second, now I think I need to, if I may, correct a little bit about the questions. In the North Sea case, it was not equidistance line, actually, in fact. It was actually the beginning of the principles of equitable solution. Why? Because the shape of the coast is actually concave. Jadi garis pantainya itu melengkung begitu. if you apply the equidistance line in that kind of shape of coast, and then the country in the middle will be disadvantaged. I think you got my point, right? If the shape is like this, the coast is very like basically a straight line in general, the equidistance line will be the best solution, one of the best solution. But if the shape of the coast is like concave like this, so the country in the middle will be squeezed. So that is actually what happens to the three countries in North Sea case, which means that is actually a revealing moment that, oh, we thought that equidistance line is a good solution. In fact, it is not always a good solution, especially when the coastal geography is like what happens in the North Sea case in Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. Because the country in the middle was squeezed, so it's actually disadvantaged. That's why at that time the court actually retreat from the use of equidistance line. They start to introduce other principles like equitable solution, basically by introducing what they call then the natural prolongation of the seabed. So I think there is two things that I would like to answer here. First is about the fact that there is imbalance between countries in the South China Sea in claiming or in proposing their claim, not based on the same law. That's first. So I mean, how can we talk about the limitation if even the claim is not based on the same basis? And the second is about the equidistance line is not always demonstrating equitable solution for countries, especially if the coastal geography is a concave. And that is exactly what happens in the South China Sea, because basically waters surrounded by countries or by land, right? So utilizing the principle of equidistance line is actually very, you have to be very careful in that kind of situation. Matur nuwun, thank you. I'll stop this now.
Thank you, Pak Andi. Pak Damos, if you would like to complete the opinion.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I think I agree with Pak Andi Arsana. I would rather to say, let me display this. I would rather to say that the question is relevant before the tribunal ruling. Yeah, the question is no longer relevant after the tribunal ruling. Before the tribunal rulings, we are not very certain whether the feature being disputed can have EEZ or can generate 200 nautical miles. And in this case, there's a lot of claim, yeah, EEZ claim, continental claim, and then your question was very relevant in these situations. We are talking about equidistance. But look at the situation after the tribunal ruling. It's clear. I mean, there is no feature that can generate EEZ, that cannot, no feature that can generate continental shelf. So why we are talking about equidistant here? Yeah. Because it's solved by itself under the limitations. The only thing that pending now is the delimitation between adjacent state. Adjacent is a berdampingan, yeah, between Vietnam and China. They have already territorial sea there, but they have not yet the limitation on EEZ and continental shelf. But this is from the mainland, yeah, between Vietnam, between Malaysia and Brunei, adjacent, yeah, adjacent situations. The Philippines and Malaysia also adjacent. But those derived from the feature, there is no more limitations. The question is only which feature belong to which country, and whoever own the feature, it doesn't affect any delimitations. That's why Indonesia is very clear, make a statement in the recent weeks that Indonesia has no overlapping claim with China, because there is no feature. Even the closest feature to Indonesia, yeah, the closest feature yang paling dekat dengan Indonesia itu namanya Quartern Reef. Quartern Reef is about less than 400 nautical miles from Natuna, right? But we are lucky because the tribunal say the Quartern Reef is a rock. It can only generate 12 nautical miles. So if it can only generate 12 nautical miles, it doesn't reach anything with Indonesia EEZ. Even for the ship, it takes couple weeks in order to reach Indonesia. Yeah. So quarter reef is only entitled to 12 nautical miles. So again, this is very important. After the tribunal, this question is no longer relevant, except on the adjacent situation, yeah, on the adjacent situation, but not coming from the disputed feature. Begitu, Bu Rabita.
Thank you, Pak Damos and Pak Andi. Since we're actually running out of time, we still have time for one more question before we come to our concluding remarks. The question is regarding China's attitude on how that particular country is very persistent on maintaining its claim on the disputed territorial area. So here we have a question. It says that since China rejects the arbitration decision, been very passive on the arbitration tribunal, and also they've been very persistent on sending a physical presence within the territory, be it in forms of commercial fishing ships or even military ships. Is it possible, if they have any other motive that the ASEAN countries has failed to detect this whole time, other than wanting control and claim over the ocean?
It is beyond my knowledge, so I think I'll have the honor to hear to Pak Damos to answer this.
The information can only be found in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very good question, and I think it's very relevant, especially for those who study about international law. Under international law, we know about the concept of critical date, right? I think Madam Rabita knows very much about this concept, critical date. What critical date means? When the dispute arises, whatever you do after the critical date does not at any event affect the status of the disputed feature, right? So the question is a bit worried about what happened if there is a physical presence by claimant to the feature. Yeah. Of course, politically, it is bothersome, yeah, politically. And most state is also very concerned on the physical presence, militarizations, building up, constructing everything. Yeah. But from the legal perspective, and I would like to put emphasis on the legal perspective, because you are the future lawyer, you are not belong to the organizations other than legal organizations. Yeah. For the future layer, critical date means whatever the attitude and whatever the behavior of state after the critical date, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't affect, even it cannot claim because I am already here, then I'm already here, then I am the owner. No, it's not the case. Under international law, effective occupation, yeah, contested by other claim cannot constitute a claim. Yeah. We have a lot of things now, like Israeli occupation in Palestine. Yeah. They have already very strong occupying the territory, but what internationalists say, it is illegal. It is illegal. So it doesn't affect any legal positions. So again, of course, from the political perspective, from international relation perspective, it's matter. Yeah, I know this is the beauty of the multidiscipline of how we approach about the issue. Yeah. So again, to my understanding, the constructions artificial and something like something that after critical date, it will constitute nothing for the legal claim. The dispute is still there. Demikian, Bu Rabita.
Thank you, Pak Damos. I think that is a very smart and safe way to answer, because also in law school, we were taught that some countries, even after the critical date, they decided to do the craziest thing, even though they know that it's not going to affect the legal dispute. But maybe, in my opinion, just maybe some countries think that it might affect the activities and the position of their opposition, implicitly, not in a legal manner. But maybe Pak Andi would like to add something before we wrap up the question.
I don't have anything to say more. but I think I just would like to thank you all. This is a really good one. I'm probably the only engineer here, Pak Damos. I'm getting lost around the ocean of bright and brilliant lawyers, so I'm really honored and humbled to be here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, before you wrap up, perhaps I would like to echo Pak Andi appreciation that this is a very good discussion. So perhaps what I can appeal from the association is, please do a lot of engagement with the ASEAN lawyer, because this is the ASEAN Law Associations. Please engage the neighbor students, and also engage what we call it, the law student from ASEAN country. The reason why I say this is because there is a gap. There is a gap between understanding of UNCLOS international law with those who understanding about international law, international relations, diplomacy, and geopolitics. Yeah. So we are very lucky that we on the lawyer thinking is a bit clear in understanding the dispute. And if you share this knowledge to the Asian scope, it would be very helpful for settling this kind of dispute. So Pak Andi will help you how to open the the network. Thank you, Tabitha. Thank you very much for the discussions.
Thank you so much, Pak Andi, and for Pak Damos for giving the concluding remarks. We are very thankful to have both of you as our speaker today. Also, thank you for ALSA UGM for making this event and sharing the knowledge to everyone who participated. I truly apologize for those who asked questions, but I did not have the time to be answered. Hopefully we get to see you in our next event, and hopefully I get to see Pak Damos and Pak Andi again sometimes in the future. Sure. It was an honor for me, and now I give it back to our masters of ceremony. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the very interesting and fruitful discussion, especially for personally, I would do a concentration on international law. We feel like it's a very interesting discussion because we have lessons in regards directly to the law of the sea. So we would like to thank our two speakers, Pak Damos Dumoli Agusman and also Pak Imadi Andi Arsana. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with us. And thank you also for Kak Rabita Madina for being our moderator today. We feel like we're guiding this discussion into a very interesting path as well. Thank you for all of the committee of this webinar series. We really hope to see you because this is a webinar series. So we really hope there will be a volume 2 on this webinar. So please stay tuned in our Instagram and also YouTube because there will be updates in regards to the second webinar. Thank you so much again to Pak Damos and Pak Andi and also Mbak Fania. Thank you for the time, and also I would like to say wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi 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 Om, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan bagi kita semua. Stay safe everyone, and we hope that everybody is healthy.
Thank you very much. Stay healthy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andi.
Pak DJ, thank you. Thanks, Rabita also.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Pak Andi, Pak Damos.
Bye, thank you.
See you in our next endeavors.
You are welcome. With pleasure.
Oke, mohon izin untuk leave ya. Thank you.
Ya.
Terima kasih Pak Damos, Pak Andi.